Welcome to John Martin Talks, where we battle ignorance and apathy daily. The growing ignorance of just how special this experiment we call the United States of America is, and the apathy that we can't or won't do anything and everything to save her. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. As you can see, my psychic sidekick, Billy Bob Bass, has been replaced today, and we got a special guest in the studio today, and we're going to talk about him in depth here in just a moment. But he has a big-time YouTube channel. It's called Survival with a Purpose, and his name is Bryan Stevens. Say good morning to everybody, Bryan.
Good morning, everybody.
Well, I have a few housekeeping issues I always have to address, but we'll get into Bryan and Survival with a Purpose in just a moment. But first, we always have to talk about our sponsor here, Big Daddy Unlimited, otherwise known as BDU. We come to you live from the Big Daddy Unlimited studios every day, Monday through Friday. It's at 8 o'clock Eastern, or as close as we possibly can to it. Big Daddy Unlimited is your Second Amendment headquarters, because you can get not only guns and ammunition, yes, I did say guns and ammunition delivered directly to your door at factory direct pricing, but you can get tactical gear. Some of the items probably that we're going to be talking about here with survival type gear, you can get them at Big Daddy Unlimited as well. And they are your Second Amendment headquarters because they literally are defending your Second Amendment rights on a daily basis. So check them out. The easiest way to get to that link is no matter when or where you're watching the show, look above the video and you will see a description of the show, and then scroll down on that and you'll see a link to our sponsor, Big Daddy Unlimited. We also have patriotthreads.org, apparel with a purpose, and they say that because that's exactly what they give you, patriotic theme material, shirts you sometimes see me wear on the show. I'll probably wear one tomorrow. But patriotthreads.org, they can even help you with charity events. Go to them. Remember, the promo code for 20% off is JMT. John Martin Talks, just print JMT. Of course, we're also on Recoil TV now. Recoil TV has a YouTube channel. They're all about Second Amendment gear, that type of thing, from the latest weaponry to answering your questions. All of that stuff about Second Amendment, you couldn't do better than Recoil TV on their YouTube channel. We are on that as well. Of course, we have our own YouTube channel. Spell it all the way out, John Martin Talks. And oh, by the way, if you want to make comments on the show that you want me to answer, you got to go to my YouTube channel, because right now I'm in Facebook jail. We're still able to broadcast. I can see all of your comments. I just can't respond to them. So go to YouTube and put your comments in there. Or you can also go out to California in front of the Facebook headquarters. I've never seen a Facebook human being or talked to one, but I wouldn't mind you holding up some shirts or wearing a shirt or holding up some signs that say Free John Martin. Got a little bit more, and then we'll get into the show, because, you know, a lot of it's getting harder and harder to find conservative talk on the internet and all across broadcast lines, because we are under attack. So I need to read this to you. Due to the move by big tech to deplatform conservative free speech, we will be moving John Martin Talks to a new secure platform so that we can continue to broadcast. You can see our show. More about that. Please download the Recoil TV app found in the link below, the same link I was just telling you about our sponsor. Right now it's available on the Apple Store and in Google Play. You know why you can get it, right? Who knows what the future holds there. In addition, you can go directly to johnmartintalks.tv to see all episodes and continue watching our show. We're not broadcasting live on there right now, but we're archiving the show up there every day so you can check it out. We're determined here to stay in the public square and to be your voice of freedom here at John Martin Talks. So remember, www.johnmartintalks.tv. All right, now that was a mouthful, and I appreciate the patience of my good old Georgia buddy here right now. Bryan tells me, and he spells it Bryan with an R, Stevens. He is a Georgia fella, so, you know, one thing about it, I didn't get a chance to ask him if he was Bulldogs or Georgia Tech. Everybody knows I'm a diehard Gator, so you can bring, I mean, if Georgia boys and Florida boys can come together for freedom, then we can come together for just about anything, don't you think,
right.
Bryan?
Yep.
So without further ado, I want to introduce you to Bryan Stevens. He has a YouTube channel with hundreds of thousands of subscribers now. It's called Survival on Purpose. So I'm going to give him a chance to introduce himself, tell you a little bit about what he does, and then we're going to expand on that. And I'm going to ask him a few questions. Imagine that. The floor is yours, Bryan.
Well,
first, welcome. Glad to have you.
Thank you for having me. It's I don't think I've ever been in. I feel like I'm in Hollywood. I've never been. This is such a professional setup here. So, if you've seen any of my videos, you know I don't have quite that professional setup. But basically, my elevator speech is that I'm your home for information and gear reviews related to camping, survival, and general preparedness for regular folks. And I stress that regular folks because I've never been in the military. I'm not a special operator. I'm not a SWAT member. You know, I'm the closest thing I've come is a Boy Scout, right? So, but I've been playing in the woods all my life. I've been shooting and using sharp stuff and just having. I like it. I like that kind of thing. I always have been. So, I decided, you know, there's probably Navy SEALs aren't watching YouTube to get gear review advice or anything else, right? They've got other sources of information. So, but I know that when I started looking at trying to figure out what to buy stuff online, you never really know who to trust. You don't know. All you see is a picture, and obviously the description on the manufacturer's site is going to make it seem like the best thing since peanut butter. So you have to kind of, and when I started looking for people that would give me some honest reviews on stuff, everything was a sales pitch. So I've done my best. I do mostly gear reviews and do some training and information stuff too, but I've done my best to, as much as possible, if I'm testing something, let it speak for itself and not interject my own opinion as little as possible. Obviously, we're human. We're going to have an opinion about stuff, but I try to be as unbiased as possible when I'm doing gear reviews and stuff. And then, man, I tell you, I'm just more and more in the last few years, I focused a lot more on firearm stuff than I ever did before because I think people don't understand how important it is. Whether even people that don't want to have a gun should be supporting the Second Amendment because that's the only thing that really protects us from tyranny. It protects. It kind of undermines and protects all those other undergirds and protects all those other rights. So, but that has anyway. That's probably off topic a little bit.
No, absolutely. There's really nothing off topic today. Well, you know, I was thinking about it as you were speaking, and you mentioned guns. I grew up with guns.
Me too.
I mean, in my little town of Hawthorne, I've said this on the show many times that I never really thought about the Second Amendment per se. I mean, I knew the history. I come from a long line of school teachers, so I was taught fairly well. And but I never thought about it in the sense of protecting it and fighting for it because to me, guns were just a part of life. I've said this before. I remember the first time I took a NRA, I think, based hunting course, gun safety course. We had to get it. They changed the law to get our license. And I remember I was only about 14 or 15 at the time and been hunting all that time. And I remember all the guys and we were in this class on a Saturday and we kept wondering, what the heck are we doing here? It's like we already knew all this stuff, you know? And so you mentioned something about focusing on guns and all. And one of the things that troubles me is that there's a lot of people, and I guess I say all this, I'm long-winded on this, but let me get this out. One of the things is I've been more involved with people who are what I would call gun enthusiasts, and people maybe like yourself. I don't know about you individually. We'll find out here in a minute. But it surprised me how they weren't that political, you know. And I've been telling people that if you believe in the Second Amendment, for instance, it doesn't matter what your party is. You better get, as they say, truly woke and start getting involved. Because our fundamental rights, including the Second Amendment, are under attack right now like never before, and the worst is yet to come. I wonder if you had any thoughts on that.
So, I'm kind of like you. I've grown up, always had guns around. When I was a kid, I remember my daddy had guns, you know, but I really, probably when I was 18 or 19, I really started shooting a lot. I had a friend of mine that worked at a gun store. We did some reloading, and we were shooting every day. And that's when I joined the NRA, and I don't know if you ever join the NRA, you're going to get some by golly information. So you know, it's like,
and they're under attack. Right
yeah,
now.
they are. But I really started paying more attention to the political side of it, just because I just realized maybe it's because I was in the Boy Scouts when I was a kid, and we focus a little bit. There's some of the badges and stuff in Boy Scouts are about citizenship in the nation, and you learn some history and stuff. And I realized that these rights that we have are not granted to us by our government, right? Specifically, that's lined out in the Constitution that these are inalienable rights from our Creator, and we seem to have developed this consciousness as a society that there's this government, some big separate entity that we're beholden to, that rules over us, and that has the authority to control us, and we seem to have lost the of the people, by the people, for the people thing. So that's how I kind of, anyway, that just really struck me at an early age, and I've always been really passionate about that Second Amendment because, hey, some of it's selfish because I like guns. Guns are fun. Shooting's fun. It's good, clean fun, and my guns are not going to hurt anybody innocent. I'm of zero risk to the population, so nobody else has the right to tell me that I can't do what I want to do.
Well, when you were talking, it made me think of something that I've talked about a little bit on the show. But back growing up with guns like we did, we knew what they would do. I mean, if you've ever hunted, if you ever target practice, when we used to shoot a watermelon kind of thing, bottles, all that kind of target practice, or if you've actually hunted, then you know what guns will do.
Right.
But a lot of people now get their information about guns from these video games. And I don't think they understand, because, I mean, I never even thought about, taking my gun out and shooting a person unless I was maybe defending my life and that hadn't come up now. But I think part of the problem is people are watching these video games and they don't really realize, like what we did growing up, that guns aren't toys. And you don't shoot them like this, that kind of thing. And I believe it actually leads to gun violence more than people like that grew up like us with guns all our life. We're not into gun violence because we know what they will actually do.
Yeah, and you can't restore your life either. It's like, those video games. Once my kids play those games sometimes, and you get shot. Okay, just wait a minute. Okay, bam, you can come back to life. It don't work like that. So there's a certain amount of reality you have to take into account.
Well, before we go any further, I want to play your intro video that's gotten, I think, over 1 million views now.
You ready to lose all your viewers?
Lose all my viewers. This is a video that I thought was pretty. I looked at the comments and people were really appreciative. They thought it was pretty catchy, and they actually asked you technical questions about how you did it and all that kind of stuff. But this is the intro video you will see if you go, and you should go, to Survival on Purpose. Check it out. Survival on Purpose, if you watch his video. So what gave you, I mean, you talked about reviewing gear and all that kind of stuff, but what really made you focus on the idea of surviving, essentially, I guess, in the wilderness in this case?
So, actually, I think that's what a lot of people essentially think when they hear survival. They think wilderness survival. And I try to, that certainly is a huge part of it because as a Boy Scout, that was my initial focus, was in the woods, right? Because I've spent so much time in the woods. But as the things have progressed, I kind of realized that survival just means staying alive. At the very bottom of it, when you boil it all down, survival means staying alive wherever you are. So I think that was kind of always in the back of my mind. But I'll try to be brief. I tend to ramble if you've seen any of my videos. But so I'm a plumber by trade. I've been a plumber for 35, 40 years. And probably...
I was an electrician by trade,
okay,
although I hadn't
go.
worked in a while. So we got a lot in common.
Yeah. But anyway, I made a plumbing video, and it did pretty well back in 2008, I think. Because I don't know if you remember, but 2008 was not a good year for construction industry. Everything kind of went down tubes, and I'm trying to figure out some other business ideas. And thought, I see, man, these gamers are making millions of dollars on YouTube. Maybe I can make a YouTube video. And the plumbing video did pretty well. And I thought, well, maybe I'll make some more videos. And at that time, you know, Bear Grylls was real popular on Man vs. Wild, and a guy named Dave Canterbury had been off of Jewel Survival, and he had a big YouTube channel and stuff. And I really I started watching some of that stuff, and I thought, man, that's what really where my heart has always been. And when I was a kid, I spent all day. I would be in the woods all day, and building forts and stuff, you know, and then come home when it was dark. Or my dad whistled. He had the loudest whistle of anybody I ever met, man. You could hear him from a mile away, and it was time to come home. But anyway, I just decided, you know, why not make a video about something that's just fun instead of plumbing, right? Because I do enough plumbing, and so I just kind of decided that I started out just doing like I want to do some Boy Scout skill stuff, and just kind of, and then as I was looking for gear to use, I realized, you know, I'm looking at this gear online, and I can't tell if it's any good or not, you know. So I started buying some gear to review, just to check it out and try to might give actual use test on it, and it just kind of progressed from there. But pretty. So I told you I ramble, but the short answer is I just really like I enjoy that wood stuff, you know, and I've tried, like I said, I've tried to expand it beyond that now, because the reality is, for most of us, we have a lot greater chance of needing some skills in an everyday urban or, you know, in the city life than we're going to get trapped in the wilderness somewhere, because most of us spend a whole lot more of our time in the non-wilderness than we do in the wilderness, unfortunately. So I think I decided, you know, it's important to try to expand that into all those skills.
Well, the cities are becoming a jungle right now anyway, man. I don't know if you saw that video the other day where the guy literally got off the bus coming from Georgia. I don't know if you saw that in New York. He a New Yorker, but he was coming from somewhere in Georgia, I remember now, and got off the bus and got attacked by 12 people and beat an inch of his life. And also survival in the city, and plus, of course, with the pandemic, or as some of my listeners call it, the plandemic. I mean, you never know. But you mentioned, for instance, that construction was at a downturn in 2008. I got a feeling it may be a downturn in 2021. And there's a connection there somewhere between what was happening in 2008 and now. I'm just saying, just for whatever, you know, whatever purposes, you might want to check that out. But there's a coincidence in there somewhere between maybe who's in the White House. I'm not sure, you know. I'm not sure. But you mentioned the Boy Scouts, and you know, I was a Boy Scout, although I probably majored in getting demerit badges, if there is such a thing. I mean, we learned. It was a crazy time, but I have fond memories of it. But I mean, I saw in your bio that one of your sons is an Eagle Scout, which is just incredible, tremendous. Two of them now. Yeah. Two of them now. Okay, well, you got 3 sons. So I want you to talk a little bit about, if you could, because I'm not trying to put you too much on the spot, but kind of that's what I do sometimes. The Boy Scouts right now are just in political turmoil, being sued and everything else for really some pretty ridiculous things. But I wonder if you had any thoughts on what is happening currently with the Boy Scouts. And I think it's nonsense, but I'd like to get your perspective on it.
So I'm honestly, my youngest son he turned 18 last year and got out of Scouts, and I kind of retired about a year ago. So I may not be up with what's happening today. I can tell you that, for example, the last big thing they did before I left was they let girls in, and my initial reaction to that was, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. But as I thought about it more and more, and I'm about to make some people mad, and I'm sorry, but you know,
I do it every day.
I had a lot of people tell me that well, the Girls got the Girl Scouts, but I don't know if you know anything about the Girl Scouts, officially their organization, but at a national organizational level, they are extremely liberal and extremely very feminist oriented at the top. And I say that in the negative connotation of that word, feminist. I don't mean women aren't equal, but kind of anti-male, sort of.
I get you.
And so I decided there certainly needs to be some controls there. I mean, I don't think boys and girls at 14 years old need to be hanging out and camping together, because stuff's going to happen. It's bad, you know. If nothing else, then just it alters their behavior, because they act differently around each other. They don't, maybe they're not focusing on the right stuff. But I think the Boy Scouts traditionally have created a program that has done a very good job of creating young men of character and instilling character in young men. And I think as a nation, we need both men and women of character. So, so the concept, I think, is good in theory. I think if they can do create officially the program is supposed to be that boys and girls they're not together except maybe in highly supervised activities. Who knows how that's going to happen in the real world? But I think if they can make that work, I think it's a good thing that we can help instill some character in some girls. We need an organization to do that. I think the Girl Scouts has abandoned that role, in my opinion. And so I know there's a lot of good Girl Scout leaders and I know Girl Scout people at local levels, but I mean at a national level, just like the Boy Scouts at a national level, I think have made so many stupid mistakes. They've kowtowed to political correctness and to the different interest group lobbies to change their stance so many times over the years. When they, a few years back, they wanted a Supreme Court decision allowing them to, allow them to bar non-heterosexual leaders, right? And the next year, they reversed themselves because of financial influence from people like UPS and other financial sponsors had got together and said, we're going to pull your financial sponsorship if you don't change that. And I had a long conversation with one of the Atlanta area, like the top dude in the Atlanta area, and I said, look, the reality is, you and I both know this is about money, because if whether you agree with that stance or not, whatever your thoughts are on that particular policy as far as sexuality, if you say something if you go to the Supreme Court and fight something and win a battle, and the next year reverse yourself, what kind of message are you sending to those young men about character? That character is fluid. That if something's right today, if you think something's right today and tomorrow you think it's wrong, and you change that because of money, you're sending the message, in my opinion, that either you didn't believe what you believed, or you were willing to compromise your beliefs for money. And so, I mean, if you believe something, you need to stand up for it. Whether you agree with everybody or not, you and I could disagree on something and still have a conversation. But that doesn't mean that we need to be willing to just bend our will to somebody else because they said, I'm gonna keep your money if you don't do what I tell you.
Well, conservatives can have a conversation, but
yeah.
between each other. But you can't talk to some of these liberals right now because they just want to shut us down. And
You're exactly right.
We're going to
yeah.
talk about some of that in a minute. I don't know if you
can I answer your question. That
sure.
was a little rambling.
No, you're doing good.
All right, sorry.
You're doing fine. You're doing fine. Our audience will ultimately tell you about that, but you're doing fine. But I don't know if you saw this or not, but of course, President Biden, and he is, unfortunately, I mean, it is a reality, ladies and gentlemen, we have to deal with. That's just the way I see it. I believe that we only have one president at a time, and I'm not asking you this. I'm just I hadn't said this statement in a while, so people may get upset with me. And we just have to deal with it. We have to deal with the reality as it is, not as we wish it to be. And if we want to change it, then we need to work at changing it. But President Biden, God help us, he is the president. He signed a bunch of executive orders, but one of them he just signed kind of ties into what we're talking about. He essentially has signed it where no states have control over this anymore, according to his executive order, that men who claim to be women, they're not, they're biological men, now can compete directly with women's sports. And I think that, to me, you mentioned feminism, but if someone's a true feminist, in other words, you believe in women are equal, like you said, and should be treated fairly, I actually think this executive order that he signed is just the opposite of that, because men competing directly in women's sports is going to destroy things like even the Girl Scouts, I think. I just wondered if you had any thoughts on that, because it's really troubling to me.
So you about to open this big old can of worms, huh?
I just think it's detrimental to women, to be honest with you.
My first gut reaction is, what kind of accomplishment would it be if you were a biological male? Because look, I'm not sorry, but it is medically and biologically there are there's Y chromosomes and X chromosomes as far as determining whether somebody is a biological male or female. And I think what has happened, I'm off track just a little bit. What's happened is we've George Orwell said in his 1984. I don't know if you ever read that book, but
I'm a big fan of Mr. Orwell. Quote him on the show often.
If you control language, you control people's thoughts. And by using this word gender to mean something other than it's always meant, as far as biological sex, then we've kind of blurred some lines there. And so I think it's important to make a distinction between those two. There's biological sex, and there's somebody that identifies as this. Okay, that's fine. You can identify whatever you want to identify with, but you're either an innie or an outie, in my opinion. You know.
I hear you.
But I don't understand what a guy. I'm gonna say guy that what kind of accomplishment is he gonna feel proud about that? You know, I just beat these people who are biologically, physically. That's just they're without there's some exceptions, but generally biological males are stronger and more athletic.
I give you a great example of that. I was watching, I'm pretty sure it was Tucker Carlson last night, and forgive me, I don't remember the lady's name, which shows you a lot right there. But she's the fastest woman on the planet, or was, and she's won she's actually won more gold medals than Usain Bolt. That's how, you know. But they pointed out that there are over 400 men in America right now that could beat every one of her times, you know, at college level competition and stuff. So here you have the greatest sprinter, the greatest track athlete maybe in women's history, but 400 men right off the bat have run faster times than her best time. So to me, it's just ludicrous. But and as far as all this, I put Bryan on the spot. As you guys know, I try to be seriously entertaining. I hadn't said this in a while. We got a lot of new listeners, but let me just tell you, when it comes down to all these issues, and I'm not asking you to comment on this, Bryan, so don't worry. But my policy is really simple. I got an open mind and a closed behind. I don't really care what other people do and think or whatever. Just do it, you know. But this idea of men competing with women is just ridiculous on its surface. But I want to play a video because you talked about new pieces of gear and things like that. I want to give people a sample. Now, most of your videos are what, about 10 to 15 minutes long, maybe 30 sometimes.
Yeah,
just depends on what
15. I shoot to keep them under 20 minutes, and most of them are around 10 or 15.
So we're just going to play a very brief snippet of a video that I think was just out a week ago to give you some flavor of what survival on purpose is actually about. Check it out.
Here on the channel, we've taken a look at a few different tactical pins. The last time was a few years ago when I actually asked the question, is it stupid to carry a tactical pin? And I got a lot of comments about that. A lot of topics were brought up. So what I thought I'd do in this video is we're going to readdress the subject. We're going to try to give you my take on some of the comments that have come up over the years on that particular video, and take a look at my latest tactical pin that I'm carrying every single day from the folks at Gerber Gear. This is the Gerber Impromptu tactical pin, and it is made in the USA. That's what's coming up next here on Survival on Purpose.
I tell you, when I first watched it, my first thought, and I got to admit my ignorance on this, I'd never heard of a tactical pin. So I don't really even know what it is. So give me a 30-second on what a tactical pin is actually.
Well, just
about.
So I'm not just a faker. I didn't even know you were doing this. So
this is absolutely true.
Basically, what this is I'd never heard of it until a few years ago. It's just a solid something that if you needed to have a non-lethal defensive weapon, that maybe you could, if you're like, I carry a gun every day, but if you're feeling a little threatened, maybe you're, whatever the case may be, maybe you're in a public place, but you're in an elevator, somebody gets on, whatever. It's probably not good manners to whip out your old gat and just hold it ready. but you can have a pen in your hand, and if you needed to poke somebody with that, I mean, just feel that you probably wouldn't want to get poked with that.
No.
So, and I use a pen all the time. I don't know about you, but I'm always signing something or needing to write something. So something you're going to have with you anyway. It's not just a weapon. So,
so really, basically, the purpose of this, beyond just the idea that it's a reliable pen, is to use it to, in a sense, a minimum self-defense, so to speak.
Yes, because
interesting.
There's legal ramifications if you use excessive force when you're not, you don't have a justification to do so. And look, I don't want to shoot anybody ever. So if I can poke somebody in the chest with that who's just being kind of a butt, I can maybe chill them out at a time so I can run away, because one of the baddest dudes in the world said the best defense is to run away, and I think that's a paraphrase from Bruce Lee, and I don't think he had to run away from anybody.
It was also a paraphrase from Big Sid, my dad. He used to say that a wise man walks away from a fight, but you know, and you got to pick your grounds and all that. But sometimes you get in a situation to where there's really no choice,
Right.
and that seems to be happening more on a daily basis. And you know, I think it's only going to get worse because you've got now people in power that have real power. They actually have real power, and Bryan mentioned before the show that he was a little upset about Georgia, what happened in Georgia. We'll get him maybe to talk about that in a minute. But people have real power right now that want to defund the police, you know, and want to do things or doing things that actually are going to make you need survival on purpose more than ever, I do believe. But since I brought it up, you did bring it up before the show about what happened in Georgia. How do you think? And of course, I got to say it ahead of time. We can't say the F word on here, so we don't say voter F. We say voter mod. I just try to get it's voter mod. But what happened in Georgia? How did Georgia turn blue, so to speak? And do you have any thoughts on that, being a native Georgian?
I got so many confused. They're kind of conflicting thoughts. One, if you look at any map of either one, either the runoff or the recent election, you'll see that even the votes which were counted, we'll say those votes, whether the ones that they actually counted, whether they were real or not, who knows? I don't think anybody can definitively say. I will say this: if there's if everywhere you look you see smoke, there's probably some fire somewhere. But my point I was getting, if you look at a map of who voted what, there are always little pockets around urban areas, and pretty much it was Atlanta, the Atlanta metro counties, which I live in one of them, and maybe a couple of counties like near Albany, I think, in South Georgia, and those are the ones that they counted that they said carried the election. I'm really disappointed in it. I think that it is a danger for America to have a single party, either one, honestly, in charge of. I don't think that's the way our founding fathers intended. They intended there to be checks and balances. That's why they set the government up the way they did in three different groups. But I think when you have either party able to control all three, there's a risk that somebody's rights are going to get trampled on. And what I'm really disappointed in, though, is when we did have the Republicans. I say we. I'm not a Republican, by the way. I'm a confirmed anti-Democrat.
I hear you.
But I think the Republicans had all three houses, for a little while, and they didn't accomplish the daggum thing that they said they were going to do. It was politics as usual. So, you know, I'm really disappointed. I think there is certainly. I guess my thing was that during the time up to the runoff, there was a lot of news stories about people moving in. People were being urged from California, different liberal places, to move to Georgia so they could vote. Right, and I think if you're doing a runoff, the only people who should be able to vote in the runoff, first of all, are the people who voted in the general election. If you didn't vote in that general election, then you shouldn't be able to vote for the runoff, in my opinion, because you shouldn't be able to move in somewhere and vote for a runoff election because you weren't in the general election. I don't know what the laws say about that, but I think there's certainly a great likelihood, in my opinion, there was some voter mod, as you say.
Voter mod. That's what I say.
But obviously, I don't have evidence for that. I can't prove that. But I saw a thing after the general election, and this guy had a Facebook post, and his post was essentially designed to refute all the different allegations of voter mod. And it was like 6 pages long. I'm like, dude, if there's enough issues that it takes you 6 pages to refute them all, there might be a little bit of something there to look a little closer at.
Yeah, well, you know, one of the things that the problem really in this last election, and it's so frustrating for a lot of people like myself, is, and you know, President Biden is talking about, his theme in the inauguration was like America Unified or Unify America, something like that. He keeps talking about unity. But the problem is, in my opinion, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, Bryan, that the reason why we can't unify, because we were having unity issues before Trump came on the scene. Trump just exposed the problems in America to a greater extent than he didn't create the problems. In my opinion, he exposed them. But the problem that I see is that the thing that we used to all agree on was the Constitution. Now, we might not agree on, which road to pave, which this or that, but we had a basic fundamental agreement on the Constitution. That was the Constitution. People don't seem to understand this because, we were talking earlier, when I would hear you talking, I thought about the term rugged individualist, because that's what we grew up being, rugged individualists, where I came from, and I'm sure where you are. But the problem, as I see it, is we don't agree that the Constitution is valid. And all of these things, like you mentioned in Georgia, and the things that Texas was suing about, and that the Supreme Court, in my opinion, it's just my opinion, usurped their duty, did away with their duty, is that all of these votes, and Georgia's a great example, if they simply followed the U.S. Constitution, we wouldn't have had all these problems in Georgia and other states, because the problems that happened in Georgia were from that consent decree, because the Constitution is clear that the only entity within a state that can change its election laws on the federal level is the legislature. But in Georgia, you had a consent decree between the Secretary of State, the governor, and this Stacey Abrams, who had no elected position, and it really, by its very nature, is unconstitutional. So I don't know if you want to get into weeds of that, but to me, the problem we're having unifying in America right now is because we no longer seem to agree with the fundamentals of the Constitution.
I think that potentially that's because many people no longer even know the fundamentals of the Constitution. I don't know, like we talked earlier, we grew up, I went to public school, you went to public school, I
did.
We grew up in that era, and we went to school in the 60s and 70s, and they were teaching, we still had basic government. I mean, I knew when I got out of high school that there was the legislative, the administrative, and the judicial branches of the government. A lot of people don't even know that. And I kind of understood about, who knows how much of it was left out. I mean, I know that you can always talk, these revisionists say this or that, but the reality is this nation was founded on we were the first ever form of government that wasn't ruled by somebody who decided who either decided I'm in charge, or who was handed down from their ancestors, like kings or monarchies or dictators. We're the first form of government that ever said, okay, you just do what you do, and I'll do me, and as long as we don't hurt each other, we're going to get together. We're going to take care of the basics, and the basics are outlined in Section 8 of the Constitution. That's the responsibilities and the functions and the rights of the government, what the government is allowed to do, and we are so far beyond that now. It is unbelievable.
Yeah, I've been saying all along that, and I was saying this before Donald Trump even ran for president, that we're living really in a post-constitutional age, and it may not be too late to save it, but we need to get back to it. So I wanted to get into this because, and I talked with you a little bit before the show on this, that there's a lot of censorship starting to happen, and I think it's going to get worse. And there are a lot of people out there, like the obvious things, say somebody like me who's political talk, they want to stop us, because I maintain there is no double standard. There's a standard for us, people like you and me. We're held to a standard. The left, I still challenge people, what standard are they actually held to? None. They can say or do whatever they want. But for instance, you might not think right off the bat, of course, you mentioned guns, which puts you targeted for sure. But when I was looking at your videos, I was thinking about how somebody on the far left might think about it. They may ask you, for instance, survival from what? Like they may put you into a prepper category. Now, I'm not knocking preppers. I'm just simply saying that everybody who's into survival is kind of being labeled as someone who is like preparing for the end times, or preparing for, God help us, a civil war. So I wonder, do you worry yourself about being censored on, because you make your living off of YouTube, and at least partially, and do you worry about being labeled and what's happening with censorship in general? Is that a concern of yours?
Absolutely. And like you said, I make it finally after 7 years. I've got to the point where I can generate some income on YouTube. I mean, I'm not like these big gamers. I'm not making millions of dollars, but it's a part-time income, and like we're down here at Big Daddy Unlimited, right? And Big Daddy Unlimited has become well known in the gun community for a good place to buy firearms and that kind of stuff cheap. They've got a lot more stuff that we'll hear about more on my channel soon, but they've hitched their wagon to the Second Amendment star too. You know, they're big supporters of the Second Amendment. So by my association with some of these other companies, that right there puts a target on my back, because YouTube, the way YouTube is, and I focus mostly on YouTube because that's all I have time to deal with. I got a little bit of Facebook stuff, but their Facebook is even more restrictive than YouTube. But if I do a gun, anything to do with a gun, their algorithm immediately, I heard you talking about algorithm this morning. Immediate
algorithm. He is by far. He's the strongest person in America. Your chocolate covered cherries are coming out. I promise you. We always got to give due deference. Go ahead.
Yeah, but it automatically flags it like this. You can't monetize it. And the monetization is not the issue, because you don't make that much money anyway, right? Unless you got millions and millions of views. But what it means is that if Google doesn't monetize your video, because Google owns YouTube, so if they don't monetize your video, that means they're not putting ads on it, which means they're not making any money on it. So that means that they don't have as much of a financial incentive to promote it to other people. Because most, if you ever watch YouTube, most of the views for everybody comes from those suggested videos. Right. Their algorithm says, hey, you watch this, how about watching this one? And mine too. So, but like, I worry about it because they can shut. That's not my platform. I don't use that, and it's their right. They can say, you know what, we don't like you anymore. Bam, you're done.
Yeah,
I don't know explanation, nothing.
I don't know if you saw this or not, but like just to show you how crazy it's getting, several big time sponsors that usually advertise on the Super Bowl, Budweiser, Coca-Cola, and Pepsi now have come out and said. And Budweiser, I think it's going to be the first time since like 1980 or something like that they haven't had a commercial, and it's not because the NFL did anything. They're worried about becoming controversial, so they don't want to put an advertisement on because they're worried that it might be controversial. So this censorship, it is kind of the other. It has a trickle down effect as well, as you were describing it, and it's just crazy. I want to play a video. I got to set this up because you may or may not have seen this, and the whole video is about 5 minutes. We're only going to play a minute or so of it, but this is a guy named Alex Stamos. He was a big time executive at Facebook. He's no longer there, and he's being interviewed on CNN's Bryan Stelter show, and they're talking about targeting. I don't know if he mentions this in this part of the video, but they're talking about knocking off things like OAN and Newsmax and cable TV. But then he goes a step further, and he talks about potentially people like you, but people they call influencers on YouTube. Now, he's talking about people who may have a little bit bigger reach than you at the moment, but if they knock them down, who's next? But I want to play this because to me, this is very frightening. To me, and it's not about my views, it's about the idea of just getting one minute. Because you mentioned Orwell, and one of the things I talk about with Orwell a lot is how he says that the more that society drifts from the truth, the more they hate those that speak it. That was one of his famous quotes as well. So I want to play this and then get your comments after. Check it out.
Of these conservative influencers to reach these huge audiences. There are people on YouTube, for example, that have a larger audience than daytime CNN, and they are extremely radical and pushing extremely radical views. And so it's up to the Facebooks and YouTubes in particular to think about whether or not they want to be effectively cable networks for disinformation. And then we're going to have to figure out the OANN and Newsmax problem. That these companies have freedom of speech, but I'm not sure we need Verizon, AT&T, Comcast, and such to be bringing them into tens of millions of homes. This is allowing people to seek out information if they really want to, but not pushing it into their faces, I think is where we're going to have to go here.
Wow. I mean, think about what he's actually saying.
What he's saying is we are the ones you should look. Thanks for making me so mad this morning. I had not seen that. That really enrages me, that the arrogance of these people that think that their views are are the ones, and we got to shut these. We have to shut these people up because oh man,
you're right.
they would be our masters if they could. That's what they want to do.
Well, we only got a couple of minutes left. I want to show two quick memes here to the people. I don't know if you're familiar with Alex de Tocqueville. He was a Frenchman that wrote about America in the 1830s. But the first one here, put it up, the socialism meme, if you can. Well, we may not be able to get it. Well, basically, while they're doing it, what he said is democracy and socialism have nothing in common but one word, equality. But notice the difference. While democracy seeks equality in liberty, socialism seeks equality in restraint and servitude, which to me was what he was basically doing in that video. So I don't know if we can get that up. But the other one I wanted to put up, and we probably can't, and this is one I'd really love to hear your comment on. He said that nothing is more wonderful than the art of being free, but nothing is harder to learn how to use than freedom.
Wow. You know,
that to me is pretty profound.
it makes me think. I remember there was a clip that was probably 15 years ago that Tom Selleck, the actor, was on Rosie O'Donnell's show and talked to pimp a movie, right? And then she brought up his support for the NRA and just got laid into him. And one thing that I always remember from that was he said, look, you know, we have made a decision in this nation that we want to live as a free people. We want a certain level of freedom and liberty. And he says, so if you have that certain level of freedom and liberty, there's certain risks that go along with that. You can't have complete, total safety and have liberty, right? So we have to be willing to accept and assume certain risk. And I think that's something, when you said that, that's what I thought of, and I don't know how applicable it is, but that, yeah, we need to learn to be comfortable. If you're going to be free, we need to learn to be comfortable with a certain level of risk and not expect everything to be taken care of for us. Because you have to be responsible for protecting that freedom. And I think what we've become is a society where far too many people just want somebody else to take care of it. Somebody else do that.
We're becoming
it's not my job.
We the sheeple.
Yeah.
We're citizens of the realm.
Somebody ought to do something, right?
Nobody is responsible for
right.
anything. Well, I really appreciate you being on the show. I want to give you a minute or so here to any closing thoughts you might have, but tell people how to reach you in your videos, and if they want to ask you some questions, because I saw you had that in one of your things too. But tell people how to get in touch with you and how to look at your videos.
Well, thank you. First of all, thank you for having me. I hope I haven't destroyed your entire audience here today. But I am Survival on Purpose on YouTube, Survival on Purpose on Facebook right now. You can go to, I have an email set up, so if you want to stay in touch in case they kick us all off everything, you can go to survivalonpurpose.com/subscribe, and every week I'll send out like a newsletter with just different stuff in it. And but yeah, that's Survival on Purpose.
Well, thank you so much, Bryan. I appreciate you being here. Well, that's going to do it for us today, ladies and gentlemen. As I say each and every day, I'll pray for your family. You pray for mine. Let's all pray for this great nation, because she certainly deserves it. But as I always say, from my heart, from my family to yours, have a blessed day.